of XRP being used for credit card transactions. And let me just tell you this too, but like, what I'm about to share with you, this reality that we find ourselves in, it's specifically because the SEC sued Ripple. That's right. This great news that I'll be sharing with you in this video, it exists because the SEC sued Ripple and attacked XRP holders on a global scale. And just hang with me and you'll understand what I mean by the end of the video. But I'll tell you here at the outset of this video, it could not be more obvious that by investing in XRP, you done picked a winner, son. You absolutely picked a winner. XRP is a very obvious early winner in the crypto space, and almost no humans know it. So a very genuine, a very sincere props and kudos to you listening to this, because way less than 1% of humans have ever held XRP at any point in history. Almost no one's ever heard of XRP, and here you are on the forefront of this emerging technology as things are actually developing. You're in before everybody has figured out that it makes sense. And so, yes, Ripple, and this is real life. Like, people are speculating and fantasizing about what this would look like, but it's real life. Ripple has partnered with MasterCard. This is real life. This is a real thing. And again, it's stunning as someone that's been here for the better part of a decade. And knowing that something like this was possible, it's just amazing to see all these things that we in the XRP community thought could and should happen. To see them actually happening now is astonishing. Between this and tokenization of real world assets, it's just crazy to see this unfolding. It is real life though. Ripple is partnered with MasterCard. And just to be clear, I'm going to go through all the specifics. It does mean that credit card transactions are going to actually occur on the XRP ledger. And it absolutely will use XRP itself because it's required by the code, and it will use RLUSD, Ripple stablecoin. But yes, the XRP ledger, a public blockchain, is going to be used to facilitate credit card transactions, a specific portion of them. Now, I'm going to get into all the details here. And I'll tell you this too, there are tons of articles covering this, and for good reason. This is gigantic freaking news. I haven't seen a single article or explanation on social media as to what an example payment flow would look like and how it uses XRP and the XRP ledger. Run through how this will actually operate. So if you're wondering, how is this sausage made? How is XRP actually used in this flow? Because all you get is these broad statements, settlement with XRP and MasterCard. Okay, but what does that mean? Like, how's a transaction look like? What will a transaction look like? I got you covered. I'm going to run through all that. I've seen nobody do that. This is my critique constantly of what I see from crypto media is they'll basically take the boilerplate. They'll take whatever the press release is, and with that, because there's no great detail in it, but they'll plaster it all over their websites. And it's like, okay, but where's the analysis? How does that work? And that's my pet peeve when it comes to this stuff. They never explain it. But, that's one of the reasons that I have this channel anyway, an XRP-centric YouTube channel, so that I can explain for you exactly how XRP is going to be used. And so here's the headline: Ripple's RLUSD to power MasterCard credit card settlements on XRP ledger. Oh, it's just crazy to me that this is real life. Oh, man. I always believed that this type of thing could happen, but it's just wild to see this. And it's a pilot program, but still, it's like just freaking gigantic. Because understand, if this gets fully adopted, you could see under mass adoption, you could see potentially every single MasterCard transaction occur on the XRP ledger, requiring XRP. You could end up seeing that if it scales like that. So we started the pilot, but they see how useful this is. They otherwise wouldn't be jumping in. So anyway, piece reads as follows: Ripple is teaming up with MasterCard, WebBank, and crypto exchange Gemini to test using its RLUSD stablecoin to settle fiat credit card transactions over a public blockchain. The initiative, announced at Ripple's Swell 2025 event on Wednesday, aims to show how regulated stablecoins can streamline traditional financial infrastructure without sacrificing compliance or safety. At the center of the project is the XRP Ledger, a decentralized payments network, and RLUSD, a US dollar-backed stablecoin introduced by Ripple in December 2024 under a New York trust charter. The asset is fully backed by cash and cash equivalents. And Ripple says it has already surpassed $1 billion in circulation. And I'll just pause to point out, yep, you better believe it. Here it is. Here's the Ripple stablecoin, RLUSD, a $1.02 billion market cap. And I shared a post on X about this, but it's just a thing about this. This coin didn't exist 1 year ago. It now has a market cap of over $1 billion, and it's ranked number 65 in market cap out of every single coin that exists. It's number 65 out of all of them. Yes, folks, it's broadly being adopted. It's going quite well so far. Anyway, piece continues. And the pilot, WebBank, the issuer of the Gemini credit card, will explore settling MasterCard transactions using RLUSD on the XRP ledger. If implemented, this would be one of the first instances of a regulated U.S. bank settling traditional card payments using a regulated stablecoin on a public blockchain. And that's right, folks. And this is why one of the reasons this is happening too is, like, the XRP ledger, as I point out from time to time, it has something that you cannot program into a new blockchain. It has history. It has 13 years of history as a track record. It just works. And if your MasterCard, XRP existing and thriving and having regulatory clarity and now for 13 years it's been around, and it just freaking works. Well, if there's a brand new chain out there, I don't care what bells and whistles it has and how fast it is, how close to free it is, it's new. And it might not work that well. You need to have a lot of time pass for people to try and hack it and poke holes in it, and the XRP ledger, people have been trying to destroy for 13 years, and here it is. So yeah, MasterCard's got some confidence here, but you're talking about MasterCard using the XRP blockchain, a public blockchain, for transactions. It's just absolutely wild. It really is. This news is stunning to me. And so let's just dig into this. So let's talk about how credit card transactions work today. You need to know that in order for this to make sense. And then I will explain, how they'll work when implementing XRP via the Ripple and MasterCard partnership. So we'll start with how they work today, and then go through like an example of what a transaction would look like once you're using XRP in the XRP ledger and RLUSD. So today when you buy something with a credit card, of course it feels instant. You tap or swipe your card, the payment's approved, and then you walk out with your item. But behind the scenes, that's not really what's happening. Okay, what you experience, as a payment is actually just a series of digital messages that are being passed between different financial institutions. While the real money movement, which is called settlement, that doesn't happen until later. So like when you quote unquote pay for something, you didn't actually pay for it. That's just messages were sent and people are agreed. And then there's, contracts behind all of this. So it's entities are contractually bound, but no money actually moved just because you quote unquote paid for the card. No, you resulted in messaging taking place. So it doesn't feel like that to you when you swipe your credit card, but that's all that's happening. Money is not moving when you do that. So here's what the process really looks like. Let's say you buy a $100 shirt. When you make that purchase, the store's system sends a message through the card network, like in this case, MasterCard, to your credit card issuer. And so that's the financial institution, of course, that gave you your card and extends the credit for your purchases. So the credit card company checks to make sure that your account is active, make sure that you have enough credit available, and that there's, nothing suspicious about the transaction. So no reports of, like, you didn't report that your card was stolen or anything like that. It'll check for stuff like that. And so then if everything looks good, it sends back an approval message. And that's when the sale goes through and you walk out of the store. So from your perspective, it looks like the store has been paid. But in reality, like I said, no money has moved yet. Zilch, zero, data, whatever that phrase goes, nothing has moved. So the stores bank, though, which, we'll call it the merchants bank. The merchants bank keeps track of all the days approved transactions and sends them through MasterCard's network to the credit card issuer. Now, MasterCard's system tells the credit card issuer, you owe the merchant bank $100 for this purchase. Then, usually 1 to 3 business days later, the issuer actually sends the funds. So only when that happens does the merchant's bank receive the money and deposit it into that store's bank account. So even though everything seems instant, the truth is that the merchant, the company you bought whatever the product from, in this case, $100 shirt, they don't get paid until perhaps several days later. If they're lucky, maybe it's the very next day, but it could be several days later. And so it's definitely not settlement in real time. And again, when that money flows, and it could begin be one 3 days later, several days later, when it finally happens, that is called settlement. That's when the money moves. Okay. Everything before that, again, it's just digital messaging and bookkeeping. That's all that's happening prior to that. Now, so in this new pilot program between Ripple, MasterCard, WebBank, Gemini, that last part, the settlement, that's the money moving, that's what's being completely reinvented. So now we're getting into utility land here. This is why XRP is never going to cease to exist. Okay. Instead of sending money through the slow traditional banking rails, the credit card issuer uses Ripple's new stablecoin, RLUSD, which runs on the XRP ledger. And a key difference here, obviously, speed. The XRP ledger finalizes transactions in 3 to 5 seconds, meaning the moment the card sale is approved. The credit card issuer can send $100 worth of RLUSD, the price of the shirt, to the merchant's bank through the XRP ledger, and the merchant's bank receives it instantly. Not 1 day later, not 2 days, not 3 days later, instantly. Because again, as fast as the blockchain moves, which is 3 to 5 seconds, it's effectively real time, right? So at that point, the merchant already has the money and can either hold the RLUSD or redeem it for US dollars immediately. So what used to take days now takes seconds, and there's no promise to pay later. It's real settlement completed almost instantly. And so this is what I was saying. Going back a decade ago, there were people in the XRP community before I even knew XRP existed talking about how this exact thing would be very useful for Visa and MasterCard. It was talked about extensively back in 2015, years before I even knew XRP existed. The XRP community was first. We saw it. Here we are now. It's taken a decade, but now it's real life. Our community was always right about the potential of XRP, and now we're right about the actual utility of XRP because time has passed and XRP has been adopted. It is useful and it's never going away. I don't care what those toxic Bitcoin maximalists want. They were wrong about XRP and it's here to stay, and they can suck donkey balls. So this change is a huge one for merchants, unquestionably, and you can see why. You get your money right away, right? Again, instead of waiting days to get your money, you receive it right away. And so, that massively improves cash flow, obviously, right? What business owner would not love that? And it also reduces the need for, short-term borrowing to cover daily expenses. Also nice. It also removes the risk of errors or delays that can happen when using traditional banking systems. And the benefit to the credit card issuer, that might seem less obvious at first, since they no longer get to hold on to, funds for a couple of days. I think they'd want to have more cash on hand rather than less, right? But the advantages actually are significant, even for the credit card company. Instant settlement, it's also better for the credit card issuer because it eliminates the short-term liability they normally carry during a 1 to 3 day settlement delay. So with RLUSD on the XRP ledger, the issuer settles immediately, removing that exposure from their books. And it also reduces operational costs tied to, reconciliation and batch processing, which, basically all the bookkeeping stuff that the nerds love happening behind the scenes. But you see, all of that adds cost. All of that, the communication behind there, all of that bookkeeping nerd stuff, that's friction and it adds cost. So And so it allows the credit card issuer to manage its liquidity in real time. That's a huge improvement over outdated and delayed systems. So for the credit card issuer, it's fantastic there too, obviously. And then for the end user, literally nothing changes. The actual user of the credit card, from your perspective, literally nothing changes. Like the credit card issuer, they didn't know how the sausage was made before, okay? And after XRP is implemented, they still don't know how the sausage is made. The experience for them is the same. From the cardholder's perspective, the transaction was instant before, and it's going to stay that way. So this technological leap will innovate the credit card issuer and the merchant, though. It's innovation for them, and obviously in huge ways, as I outlined. So that's always been, and it's interesting too, because even when you're talking about a different use case with XRP as a bridge currency, which is what Ripple's doing, it's also the case that for the end user there, they have no idea if XRP is being used as a bridge currency. There's like, oh, this transaction's fast and it's cheap. Well, similarly here, the end user isn't going to know it. It's the companies that are providing to people on the retail level. Those companies pick up the efficiencies, but it does mean that ultimately it's going to reduce costs, and that does ultimately, as it filters through the system, that will be a better experience and less expenses for the end user. But for XRP holders, let's talk about that. I mean, come on. For XRP holders, this development is extremely exciting. Every single RLUSD transaction that happens on the XRP ledger, that requires XRP to function. So it's only a tiny amount per transaction, only a tiny amount of XRP per transaction that's required. But that's not the point. What matters is that XRP is required at all. So as more banks, institutions, and payment networks start using the XRP ledger for real world settlements, that baseline utility that drives demand for XRP itself, that is exactly what it does. This is real infrastructure, folks. And when companies like MasterCard, WebBank, and Gemini are literally settling transactions on XRP rails, XRP becomes part of the financial plumbing. So over time, that kind of real-world integration naturally attracts both retail and institutional investors who recognize XRP is actually being used in the real economy. So we're talking about more institutional money being invested, as well as a substantial increase in retail investors speculating on XRP because they'll have increased confidence that it's a safe long-term investment decision. This is why I've insisted since I started running this YouTube channel, utility matters and will win the day. That is at the center of my investment thesis. And XRP just oozes utility. It could not be more obvious that this is the case. People will look back on this and be like, oh man, I wish that I knew about XRP back in 2025. Just fast forward 10 years from now when XRP is whatever price it'll be, people are going to wish that they knew what you know now. That's what's going to happen. So yeah, turns out you picked the winner. And I was teasing this at the outset of the video. You know what's hilarious about this to me? Oh, I love this. The SEC's lawsuit against Ripple, which started back in 2020, late 2020, that was supposed to scare institutions away. And for a time it did, but ultimately instead, it led to a landmark ruling in 2023 that gave XRP what basically no cryptocurrency, other cryptocurrency has in the United States, and that's clear legal status. XRP absolutely has that. And I know we're in a pro-crypto era, but there's still some legislation that needs to get through so that everything else is in the clear. Right now, XRP is in the clear. So, the court decided that XRP itself is not a security when it's traded on exchanges. Specifically, that sentence, and I'd have to paraphrase, but effectively, Judge Torres cited that XRP in and of itself is not a security. And so, as a result, if that's the case, the end result is that, yeah, of course, as long as it's not an illegal securities transaction that you're doing, then the asset itself is not the problem. Of course, you can buy and sell it. And so they did cite that even for the instances where Ripple sold their XRP programmatically, which means they just sold it on an exchange blindly to a recipient, Like that specifically, those transactions, that Ripple engagements, those were not illegal securities transactions. That is what the judge found, right? So yeah, the court again obviously decided that XRP itself is not a security. And so ironically, that clarity is exactly what made MasterCard comfortable enough to move forward with this partnership with Ripple. And they said that. They said as much. That is not me speculating. Oh, that's probably why they did it. They said it's because XRP specifically has legal clarity. So the very lawsuit meant to cripple Ripple ended up making it one of the safest, most regulatory-ready blockchain companies in the freaking world. So silver lining much? I think it's safe to say. We would not be seeing this headline, at least not now, if not for the fact that the SEC sued Ripple and XRP got legal clarity as a result. So now years later, Ripple is working with major financial institutions to power real credit card settlement on the XRP ledger. So, the SEC tried to stop Ripple, and in doing so, they cleared the way for XRP to become one of the biggest winners in the future of global payments. That's not hyperbole, that's fact. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea.